production starting in August, officials in the group said, amid signs that demand is returning to normal levels following coronavirus-related lockdowns. Key members of the OPEC and its Russia-led allies are set to meet via web conference Wednesday to debate the group's current and future production. In April, Saudi Arabia, the world's largest oil exporter, led a push that saw the 23 producer group cut its collective output by 9.7 million barrels a day as the pandemic led to a collapse of oil demand. Now Saudi Arabia and most participants in the coalition support the loosening of the curbs. The delegate said under a Saudi proposal, the so-called OPEC Plus coalition would relax its current curbs by 2 million barrels a day to 7.7 million barrels a day. According to the scoops, of course. So in order to win the situation, I want to bring to the show my next guest this morning, Yousef Alshammari, Editor-in-Chief, Sea Markets. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining us.
Hello, Alexandra. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Yousef, certainly I want to kick off with the upcoming meeting, which is tomorrow, of course, web meeting, that's for sure. So what are your expectations? Do you believe what we're seeing on media is, let's say, what is going to happen actually?
Well, yeah, absolutely. Last night, I just would like to highlight that we have published a report on oilprice.com, and we have elaborated on the situation. Currently, OPEC is on a 9.6 million barrels per day cut that started in May until of course, end of June, and got extended by a month until end of July. As you know, the prices of Brent actually doubled from less than $20 a barrel to now above the $40 a barrel. Certainly, this is a big success for OPEC, although perhaps you may argue with me about different OPEC producers and the break-even price for different countries. But most importantly is that currently crude oil is certainly within a tradable range for oil companies within the OPEC countries, of course, including the OPEC Plus. So the second phase of the agreement is to reduce that cut into 7.7 million barrels a day, starting from August until December 2020. That's now the most likely scenario. Why we think that the current cuts will not be extended? Number one, there are a lot. If you look at the non-OPEC producers and the OPEC and the market shares associated with that, I think for Russia they would be comfortable with a price for Brent exceeding a $40 Brent, even if the cuts are reduced but to 7.7. I don't think the price, we could see a $2 discount in the price because of that slight increase in production, but that is likely to rebound in the Q4, actually in the end of Q3 of this year, due to demand recovery, assuming that we don't have a second wave of COVID-19. The other thing, what I think is that about the shale producers, I believe that this is a kind of a new strategy, especially from the Russian side, is to keep the growth in the U.S. shale oil production in check. And currently, we can see that the number of rigs in the United States are as low as 181 active oil rigs, and this is extremely low. It actually takes back. It's within the. It never became as low as this since the global financial crisis that hit the global market in 2008, between 2008 and 2009. But on the other hand, there's a very important factor that we have to take in mind, in that it's not going to be only 7.7 million barrels per day, because you will have Iraq, Nigeria, Angola, Congo, who did not achieve their targets, 100% compliance, and the cut targets that they pledged to achieve between May and June, and that means they will have to commit to a deeper cuts between August and December. So I think we could see 7.7 from OPEC plus additional of at least 1 million barrels coming from the low compliant countries. But certainly that could weaken prices over the short term, but on the long term, I do believe that prices could rebound with recovering demand.
I wanted to talk about this second wave of cases in the United States. Yesterday, the Florida governor, how can I say, just reinstalled the shutdowns, if we can call it like that, especially for a few activities. And not only the situation in Brazil is critical, together with India. We've heard from Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus has warned that too many countries are headed into the wrong direction. Of course, I'm referring to the WHO director. Do you believe that OPEC Plus is going to consider these circumstances in the US and of course many other countries that are flooded with COVID cases?
Yes, I certainly think this is a major risk. And yet, if we look at the data, the current US gasoline demand is about 8 million barrels, and it used to be 5 million barrels at the height last April. Average gasoline demand before the crisis was about 9.5 million barrels. So although we see now some lockdown measures being taken in the US and Brazil, there is some risk of second waves and possible impact on demand, but that's not currently the case according to the figures. We're seeing that U.S. oil inventories, commercial inventories, can continue their way down, and that's the major reason why I think OPEC could reduce the current production cuts to roll them back into 7.7. If demand gets hit, or so we have a similar hit on demand like what we saw in last April and May, then I think possibly could OPEC, because they meet on a monthly basis. So I believe we could see another possibility of bringing back more stringent cuts in a place.
Do you believe the OPEC and of course OPEC plus countries are satisfied with the current crude oil prices, which are kind of hovering around 40? Of course, I'm referring to the WTI, hovering around $40 to $41 per barrel. Do you think this is, how can I say, a good beginning?
Well, I think that's not a bad price, especially if you consider the current global economic situation. Currently, we have aviation is not fully back online. You still have a lot of people around the world are taking work from home options, which means less traveling, less gasoline demand. And we see a price hovering around $43, and that was the price of crude oil just before global lockdown happened last March. So I believe prices aren't bad yet. I do believe that we with continuing enhancement of economic activity, we could see prices rising even above 45 and possibly even exceeding $50 by the end of this year.
All right. Thank you very much, Yousef Alshammari, Editor-in-Chief, C Markets. Thank you so much for joining us. Fantastic to catch up with you.
Always a pleasure, Alexander.